Well, then let's talk. Speaking of progressive challengers, Jen. Uh, so let's talk about your race then. I mean, you went up against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a pretty big political giant in the Democratic establishment, one who I think it is safe to say at this point has no qualms cheating whatsoever.
Yeah.
There's no way those races in 2016 and 2018 were valid. So what was your experience?
For the most part, it was really good. I enjoyed seriously, I feel like I know my district so well now. I love that I can drive past almost any neighborhood in my district and I actually know the names of the people that live in random different houses. Oh, I met them. Oh, I met them. Oh, I know. And it did create this real sense of community. And we've really built a very nice coalition in bringing people together from different parts of my different organizations that I'm involved with that have come together. So my experience was really positive. And in fact, the only part of it that I didn't like was the stuff having to do with dealing with our local party establishment, because they just ghosted us and blackballed us. And to this day, our Democratic clubs are still, they haven't even acknowledged that there was an election, but that Debbie had a challenge. They're just pretending that didn't happen.
Do you support the creation of a new party?
Absolutely. I support every and any. I am about policy. I am only about policy. The only reason that I am affiliated with the Democratic Party is I do live in a closed primary state in a very gerrymandered district. And it is really the only way to do anything here. I wish that weren't the case. Florida will probably be the last place to have something like ranked choice voting. We're very behind. But I support any and all means of promoting the policies that I support. So if that comes from a third party, that's absolutely. I support any and all means to get the policies to the people.
So would you ever consider first of all, are you thinking about ever running again?
It's always something that's in the back of my mind, only from a sense of keeping going the momentum that we've built and the platform that I've built and the following that we have. So we're going to definitely keep going with a lot of things. I mean, we have our volunteer organization that's still going. We've started a podcast. And my goal is to still keep canvassing, meeting business owners, really being out there as somebody building coalitions to serve the community. And then we'll see where that takes us. I've always been of the thought that this is a public service. Political life should be that. And really, when it's done properly, it comes from the ground up organically. Candidates that are popular because they come from the ground up. They come from the people. When somebody just decides, and we have no shortage of political climbers in this county, when you just decide, I want to be a congressperson, I want to run, I want that job, and then you do it from the top down and try to sell a candidate to the people, you're never going to get the kind of movement, the kind of passion, the kind of loyalty. You're never going to get the kind of support that you get if you come from those people. So if, a year from now, it seems like a good strategy and the movements, like I'm involved with the Sunrise Movement or, just different groups, even whether it's DSA, are, wanting me to do that and are encouraging that, then I'll address that then. But it needs to be organic and it needs to feel like it's what's in the best interest of the movement here in general.
So for everybody watching, we're talking to Jen Perelman, who ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and we're talking about what she's up to now and everything that's going on. If you got any questions, please super chat it up. I'll get to those at the end, and we'll go through your questions. And hit the like button, everybody. Hit that like button. Hit it. So would you ever consider something local? Would you ever consider city council?
No, I wouldn't, because again, that's what would make the most logical sense for somebody that is seeking a career in politics. And that's what people always say. You start local, you work your way up to county, you get to the state house, this was never about me wanting that job. This was never about me wanting to be political. I'm not political. I'm not a politician. I don't want to play games with people. This was more about a mission to get the corporate money out of our district. And the demographic that I bring to the table was something that really allows for the possibility of that happening that other people might not have here. That's just the reality. I'm a middle-aged Jewish woman that's from South Florida. And I have a connection because of that to this community. I'm from here. So, as far as commission and whatever, that I'm not worried about garbage pickups. I'm not worried about, like, those are the things, and I'm very happy supporting those people. I want to get the corporate filth out of my gerrymandered district. And the way to do that is to cut off the head of our snake.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, I always ask that question to folks who have tried to go the electoral route or have entertained the electoral route, because I do think, I mean, I get it. It's like with your mission, it's not applicable. But, for a lot of folks who just want electoralism to be their wheelhouse, which there's, I mean, hey, we need those folks, right? I mean, it's definitely not for me. But
hey, as long as they're serving their community and their constituents, and they're not taking corporate money, I have no problem with people wanting to do that as a career. Look, Bernie's made a career out of public service. I have no problem with that. And that's one of the arguments that the left always makes against term limits, which I support. But for every Bernie Sanders, there's 100, Nancy Pelosi's.
Well, and if you're going to do it the Bernie Sanders route, you are picking the long game. Where it's like, as far as term limits are concerned, that may not even apply to you in so many cases, because you're going to be bouncing around anyway. I mean, you're going to be bouncing around to different, like Bernie, he was a mayor at one point, and he's been in the Senate a long time. Yeah. But it's like in a lot of cases, if you go that route, there's you're in it for the long haul, and they always try to screw you over. I mean, you look at Dennis Kucinich style politicians, Bernie Sanders style politicians, Jim McDermott style politicians, Darcy Burnish style politicians. They try to screw you over.
I know.
Yeah.
But you don't stop fighting because of that. You just kind of just keep doing what you're doing. And this is the whole point. Like, I found our campaign was extremely successful. I mean, I didn't win that primary, but our campaign was extremely successful. We got the same amount of votes that Tim got in 2016. He had $4 million. We had 400,000. He had an endorsement from Bernie. We didn't. And we were in the middle of a pandemic, and we got the same amount of votes that he did. So that, to me, says that we're making a lot of progress. That says that we're actually moving forward. And that the mission, which is really getting more and more people involved in what's going on locally in their lives and understanding the importance of collective action and just all the different things that we're working on to do policy-wise, the more people we bring into that fold, that's a successful mission, regardless of who ends up in that elected position.
Did you ever get any acknowledgement from Debbie Wasserman Schultz? Like, did she ever reach out to you? Did you ever?
No. She honestly, it's as if there was no primary to her. She just went about her life like it wasn't going on. She did hit the polls. She did do 2 internal polls that must have given her a little bit of a scare, because I did see her out kind of busting ass during early voting. But she never acknowledged me. She just sort of pretended it wasn't happening. But I know that it got to her. It totally got to her. We call her Karen Wasserman Schultz. She actually called up her HOA's management company and complained because we put door hangers on her door.
Nice. Well, I think I talked to Shahid Buttar about this. I think that one of the reasons for that, first of all, there's no way she didn't know who you were. I mean, she definitely knew about you. And I think a big thing was, they saw what happened to Crawley with AOC, and they were like, okay, we're going to try to avoid debates. We're going to try to avoid giving validity to this person. So enough people are just like, well, I don't know if this is a real contender. I'm just going to go with what I know, which is Nancy Pelosi, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. They've been around a long time, blah, blah, blah. And it's very sad. And Shahid said this when we were talking about this. where it's like, well, we have a media that allows that to happen. It basically allows them to maintain their power because they basically get to dictate whether or not this person is viewed as a real opponent by granting them a debate or just granting them the opportunity to be seen. And that needs to stop. You need to have a media that's going to be like, yeah, we're going to have debates because the public has the right to know who wants to represent them and what they plan to do. And if you don't show up for it, that should be on, like, hey, this person's not showing up for it. We're scheduling it. We are scheduling it. It shouldn't be like, oh, are you willing to do this media appearance? It's like, no, this is what we're doing because you have an obligation to your constituency. You have an obligation to your district. You got to show up to this.
Yeah, the problem is that people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Nancy Pelosi are threaten and control the local media in such a way, and even the local Dem clubs and organizations, even ACLU, any of those organizations that do candidate forums. We had candidate forums for sheriff, state attorney, every state house. We had candidate forums for every single thing, even clubs that I'm on the board of. We did forums for candidates. Not one local club acknowledged my race with Debbie except for the Progressive Caucus. That was it. No one else even acknowledged that there was a race going on. And that is courtesy of her. She makes that. She makes certain that that's the way it happens.
Did any of them give you an explanation? Like where you're like, hey, I'm here.
Yeah, we get songs and dances. We get things like, well, it's our policy that we don't do primary races when it's already a blue seat, and we don't really get involved in races that aren't just Broward County. And there's a different song and dance for every organization. But the bottom line is they're scared of her. And she basically sent out some sort of memo keeping everybody in line. And I wanted to tell you another big part of this puzzle. And Shahid and I had talked about this as well. When it comes to this sort of chicken and an egg concept, like, okay, well, maybe I'd be viable if we got media. Well, you're not viable because you don't get media. Like, it's this sort of vicious circle. And one of the worst components is labor, unions. The unions will only support you if you have a certain amount of money and if you're viable, even if you are the candidate that's in their best interest. So it's the same thing. And I had several meetings with lots of locals, and it's a matter of, oh, well, if you were more viable, and I'm like, well, I'd be more viable if you would support me. Like it's not something that can happen again until we have like publicly financed elections and level the playing field. But the unions are the kind of organizations that are a big part of this blackballing and ghosting that happens to progressives who actually would be in their best interest.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that unions, especially at the top, have a certain level of corruption too. A lot of the time, I mean, it does happen. Where and you can think of some of the biggest, for instances, like when was it the teachers where they endorsed Hillary without consulting anybody. They
all do that. All the unions do that. They all do that. And at a local level, our local Broward AFL-CIO, the leader, his name is Dan Reynolds. And he actually went against his own bylaws and did not even grant me a screening, did not even return my phone call, wouldn't even talk to me. And he oversees a handful of locals that all actually really liked me, but they couldn't do anything because they're members of the AFL-CIO. And he has a very personal relationship with Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And so he just doesn't see fit to talk to anybody else. And this is the kind of crap that we're calling out. And we're naming names because this is ridiculous. This is somebody, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and I'm going to quote somebody that I was speaking with at a local union from the local CWA, that she was at a dinner with a bunch of the union guys. And she said, I don't know what your union guys' problem is with trade agreements.
What did they say?
They were speechless. Like they just didn't even know what to say. The locals don't like her. They want nothing to do with her. But because of this gentleman, Dan Reynolds, nobody can get anywhere. And so this is one of the things that we're working on. One of the campaigns that we're working on locally with labor is really trying to educate rank and file so that they understand that they have the power to rise up within their unions and say, no, we're not taking this. This isn't right.
I mean, that is just mind-boggling that they would be so I mean, this is a woman who like is involved with payday loans. Like it's so. I mean, it's unbelievable. On any other planet, she would be considered far right, not just like right wing. She'd be considered far right.
I know.
I mean, that's it in Joe Biden too. It's like Joe Biden is a neocon. That's what he is. He is a neocon. You replace a neo-fascist with a neocon. Here's the problem. Neocons lead to neo-fascists. That's how it works. So we're still in that freaking cycle. So is it fear then that they feel towards her? Because I mean, she is not, I mean, you wonder how, and I'm not trying to be like just crass here, but I mean, I don't know how else to put it. There is nothing remotely likable about that woman. I mean, the way she,
and yet the people like the old biddies here love her.
I don't get it. I mean, she's rude. She is not approachable. She is always scowling, which you know, and I'm not trying to like get too surface. So I mean, I'm one of those people. I kind of have a natural scowl. I don't mean to. You know, but whenever I'm reading, I look like I'm trying to hold in a fart or something. I can't help it. It's just what my face looks like. But like with her,
she called the Capitol Police on Medea Benjamin.
Right. I mean, it's like there's just nothing. She is like a real life comic book villain.
Yeah.
Where it's like, who is inspired by this? Every time she speaks, there is nothing worth taking from it at all. It's usually like she sounds like she's reading like a parking restrictions manual whenever she speaks, and the substance that's coming out is just as bad.
Yeah.
And yet she has all this power.
Yeah, a lot of it's fear. I've spoken with multiple Democrat state party leader, like insider people that are delegates to the party. And I mean, that they can't stand her, but they're not going to step out of line. So it's, you know, it's fear. She actually literally told one of these gentlemen who is a pretty centrist person and was not a Sanders supporter, not a progressive. And yet this gentleman cannot stand Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And he's a major person in the party. And he told me that at one point she went up to him after she tried to run somebody against him in his district he's in St. Petersburg. Like she took an interest in going against him just to screw him. That's what she does. In a district that has nothing to do with her. And she went up to him and said, "I'm Debbie Wasserman Schultz and I always get what I want." And so, you know, this is how she talks. This is how she talks to, and that's to a gentleman older than her, very nice guy, very, you know, like decent person. And this is how she just talks to people. And so, you know, we also think maybe she has things on people. I don't know. But they are scared of her and they do stay in line.
I mean, this is why House of Cards got canceled. Because the real thing is so much more sinister.
Oh, that's the thing. People don't realize. If people think for a minute that anybody with real power hasn't had to use that power in a way that is unethical, amoral, illegal, then you're delusional. I mean, then you're just living in a fantasy land. You don't get that level of power when you're that unpopular and be able to maintain it unless you're doing something that wields that power. Because it isn't out of popularity.
What do you think the fix is for all this?
Just keep going, keep getting people through. I mean, look, we got Cori Bush, Jamal Bowman. You know, we're slowly but surely chipping away at the corporatism. But I think that as long as we keep putting it out there that this has nothing to do with red versus blue, this has to do with corporate and non-corporate. That's it. Those are the only teams that actually matter. And just keep pushing that narrative till more and more people can get in there that aren't beholden to corporate and special interests. Because that's the only way that you'll ever be able to get things through, like term limits, is when you get people that are in there for the common good and not their own self-serving career motivation. And right now we don't have that. We have, you know, a handful, but it's not enough. So we just need to keep plugging away.
Where can people go to learn more about you?
So generationalchange.com is the website. Our show is on YouTube. Please subscribe. It's called Generational Change, generation with a J. It's cheesy, I know, but it worked. And we have a podcast.
Like
Peter actually came up with that. I know you know my campaign manager, Peter.
Yeah.
He's the one who actually came up with generational change.
Nice.
Because we used to say next gen. So then it was, and the truth is, this is a huge generational divide, and very specifically in our district. So everyone check us out. We're on Spotify and iTunes. You can get our podcast, Generational Change, and also follow me on Instagram and Twitter at GenFL23.
Right on. Everybody check it out.
Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You can tweet me an article at Ron Placone. We'll go through it together and make it our own. Get your news on with Ron. Don't you want to know what's going on? We're getting our news on today.